People don't like Frodo Baggins. A common complaint, particularly among people who have only watched the movies, is that Frodo is weak, boring, and annoying. This fact is surprising to some fans, so if you're skeptical, when I was a kid and the Lord of the Rings movies were coming out, Burger King sold collector's goblets of Frodo, Aragorn, Gandalf, and also Arwen because they needed a girl.
They're all yours to have and to hold. The adventure begins here.
Every store I went to was sold out of Aragorn and Gandalf, but guess who was always in stock? Frodo. Also Arwen, of course. This anecdote gets to the heart of Frodo's perception among general audiences. Even when he's not being actively disliked, Frodo is simply passed over for other, more likable cups. The ironic part is that these fan-favorite characters view Frodo as the biggest hero, but that doesn't change or explain his lack of popularity among modern audiences. To understand that, we need to look at how, despite being a hero, Frodo doesn't easily fit within the templates most other heroes follow. Templates like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, the famous story structure built around mythological heroes and their journeys. Movies like Star Wars were directly written according to its principles, and other famous movies and books can be easily mapped onto its pattern. Frodo's quest initially seems like it fits the bill. Gandalf gives Frodo a clear call to adventure. He receives supernatural aid from characters like Tom Bombadil and Gandalf. Frodo's decision to carry the ring to Mordor is a true threshold. But as easily as Frodo seems to fulfill this blueprint, he also inverts it. For one thing, most heroes gain strength and independence over the course of their journey, but this isn't the case for Frodo, who becomes increasingly weak and dependent on others. And despite saving Middle-earth, Frodo ultimately fails to give up the ring. Setting aside the fact that nobody could have destroyed the ring, Tolkien wrote that, quote, "Frodo indeed failed as a hero. He did not endure to the end." And so where Frodo's character arc is incompatible with the full hero's journey, there are other characters in The Lord of the Rings who fulfill it much better. Characters like the fan favorites I mentioned earlier, Aragorn and Sam Gamgee, who Tolkien referred to as the Lord of the Rings' chief hero, both of whom get the girl, the acclaim, and become the king and mayor of their respective homes. When the four hobbits return home from their quest, the local people pass over Frodo, instead heaping their praise onto Sam, Merry, and Pippin. Quote, "Sam was pained to notice how little honor Frodo had in his own country. Few people knew or wanted to know about his deeds and adventures. Their admiration and respect were given mostly to Mr. Meriadoc and Mr. Peregrine, and, if Sam had known it, to himself." These Shire folk work as a direct stand-in for the fans who dismiss or dislike Frodo. Both groups praise the characters who, from their points of view, best fulfill the hero's journey, and in particular, the journey's final stage, in which the hero victoriously returns home, resuming their old lives but having been profoundly changed. Whereas Frodo's journey to Mount Doom has left him irreparably broken.
We set out to save the Shire, Sam, and it has been saved. But not for me.
In contrast to Frodo's companions who charmed their way back through the Shire, quote, "riding by with their mail shirts so bright and their shields so splendid, laughing and singing songs of far away." Frodo himself, quote, "dropped out of all the doings of the Shire." What makes Frodo seem even more aloof, misunderstood, and, for lack of a better term, unliked by the residents of the Shire is the fact that his wounds are invisible. Yes, Frodo was physically stabbed, stung, and bitten across Middle-earth, but his lingering pain stems from their internal consequences. His wound from the Witch King in particular. "Alas, there are some wounds that cannot be wholly cured," said Gandalf. "I fear it may be so with mine," said Frodo. "There's no real going back. Though I may come to the Shire, it will not seem the same, for I shall not be the same. Where shall I find rest?" Gandalf did not answer. This begs the question of why Tolkien would make this forever wounded, buzz-killing hobbit his protagonist when he had these other, more traditionally heroic characters. A question like this involves a lot of speculation, but it's hard not to draw parallels with Tolkien's experience in World War I. A war so terrible that many soldiers returned to homes that were saved, but perhaps not saved for them. Tolkien notoriously disliked allegory, and so while The Lord of the Rings doesn't have any direct metaphors to our own real life, there's certainly a lot in common between Frodo's wound from the Nazgul and the PTSD much of Tolkien's generation must have experienced following the war to end all wars. This is all a little darker than I normally get, but it feels relevant. In the foreword to The Fellowship of the Ring, Tolkien explains that, quote, "One has indeed personally to come under the shadow of war to feel fully its oppression. By 1918, when the war was over, all but one of my close friends were dead." And so while Tolkien called Sam the story's chief hero, it's not wild to suggest that Frodo carries some of the author's deepest personal connections. When you imagine Tolkien being drafted in 1915, he probably felt something closer to Frodo's fear and reluctance to leave home than he did Sam's excitement to see the elves. But like Tolkien, Frodo did eventually return home. And for all the talk of Frodo not fulfilling the hero's journey, I like to live in a world where he does, but we just don't get to see it. The moment we consider to be Frodo's end.
End? No, the journey doesn't end here. The grey rain curtain of this world rolls back and all turns to silver glass. And then you see it. White shores, and beyond, a far green country into a swift sunrise.
One reason The Lord of the Rings is as relevant and beloved now as it was in 1950 is because of Tolkien's ability to write stories that ring true to human nature. And one great example of that is the differing perceptions we see toward Frodo. In the books, the people who least like and respect Frodo are the least capable of understanding his accomplishments. These are the largely ignorant residents of the Shire, or, if you're okay with allegory, modern audiences. Whereas the wisest and most powerful characters in Middle-earth, the people who truly understand Frodo's sacrifice, have the utmost respect for him. In other words, they like him a lot. So to put this video in a nutshell, if Aragorn, Gandalf, and Sam walked into a Burger King in 2001, I'm confident they would have asked for a Frodo cup. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing for more.